Hello and welcome to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host, and as always, thanks so much for being here. Well, I have another terrific show for you today. I hope you enjoy it, as I hope you have enjoyed all the other shows I've brought to you, and there have been a few, so I hope that you've been with me every week. I have the pleasure of having Virginia Wolf, an actress and founder of Herstory Theater. And Ginny, so good to have you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Deborah. Pleasure to chat with you.
Well, you know it, it's your second time here, so I want to thank you for being here again.
Oh, love it. You know us actors, we love to talk about ourselves, no problem.
That's good, because that's exactly what I want. I want all of you here. You know what I like to do, which we've done, and what I usually do with all the guests, is talk about their background. So why don't you reintroduce yourself to the viewer and tell us about yourself?
Sure. Virginia Wolf, I married into it. My parents did not give me that name.
Okay.
And I was an avid theater lover and actor all through my childhood, through high school, through college. And then took some time off to have a career in advertising and then to raise a family, and only came back to getting on stage, gosh, now, well, probably 15 years ago now. And have not stopped ever since then. Just love it. And I, as I was kind of following the community theater route, taking some classes and all of that, I was also involved with a local historic home, the Stanley Whitman House here in Farmington, Connecticut, which introduced me to the fact that we had a witchcraft panic. We had a few of them back in the 17th century here in Connecticut. I'd been born in Salem. I always knew about the Salem witchcraft panics, but that working with the Stanley Whitman House really opened my eyes. I became so intrigued with the stories of the women, mostly who were accused, that I wrote a one-woman play about them, then had to figure out a way to perform it and market it. So I started a theater company, Herstory Theater, and that has gone on to be not only a place for me to produce my own work. I have a couple of different shows that I do, one-woman shows, but also to produce and have really great fun with all sorts of other productions. So it's been nice.
Did you know growing up when you were small, going into high school and college, you mentioned theater, but did you think that you were going to be an actress all of your life?
Not all of my life. I actually started when I was probably one of the most unattractive and unhappy adolescents ever to walk the earth. And I remember we moved when I was going into 5th grade, so I was 10 years old, and we moved to a new town, and I didn't know anyone, and I just wasn't a happy kid. And a woman in the neighborhood decided to put on a play that very first summer before the school year, and I'd never done anything like that, never been exposed to anything like that. And we put on a play in her backyard, and that was like, ooh, this is fun. I like this. So that did start it. And yes, all the way through high school, I was going to be an actress. But in college, I think when things got really real, I realized, what a hard life it is. And it's not like I had a big trust fund that I could rely on. I needed to make a living. And B, I'd had a pretty easy life. And I think innately, I couldn't verbalize it then, but I didn't have a whole lot to bring to the table at that point. I'd had a happy childhood. My parents were still married. I hadn't had any tragedy. I hadn't had adversity, any of that. So somehow I think innately I realized that. And now, once we get to be a certain age, we've had all of that. And I think it makes our portrayal of characters much richer.
And then from there, you went on to advertising and, of course, your family. What was the turning point for you to look back and start being an actor again?
I think once we were pretty well established here in Connecticut and I was raising my kids, I remember there was another woman who had a couple of kids, and she was doing community theater. And I didn't know how she was doing it. My husband did not have a job that allowed any flexibility for him, and I didn't have family nearby. So I didn't know how she was doing it, but I was like, I'm going to do that sometime. I'm going to get back into it. I always loved it. I've always been so happy on stage, but it wasn't the time until it was the time. And I'm glad. I don't have regrets aside from the fact that all those ingenue parts are long behind me. But it just, once I knew that I could safely, without abandoning the people I love, my family, I could get out there and start again. I did it the first chance I could.
So when you decided to pursue that acting career, once you made those decisions, what was your next step?
Well, I took classes. First, I thought, well, I know I love it, but am I any good at it? Can I possibly get cast? So I started taking some classes at Hartford Stage, which is our wonderful theater here in Hartford. And they have an educate, and I would highly encourage anyone. The education departments at a lot of these theaters, they're always in flux, and there's a lot of turnover. So they'll offer classes one season, and then maybe the next season they won't because they don't have an instructor. But at that particular time, it was great. And I made some friends in that very first class. What was the name of it? The Actors. Oh, I can't remember. Actors Showcase, I guess. And it was a 12-week class, and then we actually performed on the Hartford stage on a Monday night when it was dark. And I made friends in that class that I have acted with since then, and really enjoyed being part of their world. And from there, started auditioning, started getting cast, which was wonderful. Started getting cast in parts that I didn't see myself in. And that was when I was like, okay, well, I'm a mom, I'm a middle-aged mom, so I'll do middle-aged mom parts. But I've gotten lots of parts that are not middle-aged mom parts, which is really nice. It's very nice. And I went on to continue to study, per se, going and taking classes where I could when the time was right. And during COVID, taking a lot of Zoom classes as well. That was, when the shutdown happened, it's like, are we going to come out of this better than we were? And I did try to make that a focus, that I'm going to hone my skills and learn as much as I can, so when we come back and get back on stage, I've got more to offer.
You're mentioning classes, and you're also mentioning classes on Zoom. And you and I talked before we started today about your recommendation to those that are thinking about pursuing an acting career. I have many of those actors that are watching the show. Do you recommend education or classes to get started?
I really do. If I had taken a different path, how I would have loved to have tried to get into the Yale School of Drama. But coming into it later in life, I think finding classes that you can take and that kind of fit. There's all sorts of methods for acting, and you also have to find the one that rings true for you. I went to the HB Studios for a year, traveled into Manhattan once a week, and it's the Uta Hagen way of acting. I forget, they probably have a name for it. And I realized I needed to have started to study this way of acting when I was 12, because there's so much to it. And I respect it so much, but I was like, I'm not going to get far enough starting now. So the Atlantic School of Acting, I ended up doing a lot of classes with practical aesthetics, and there's a wonderful local teacher here in New Haven, Mariah Sage, who has a company, Present and Perform, and she does some wonderful classes and teaches you about this practical aesthetics way of acting that I find is invaluable. So yes, I think classes, not only to improve your own skill, but also as a networking and a friendship building. It's a small world, the theater world here, well, I guess everywhere, but here in Connecticut. And being connected is really, really nice.
I took the liberty, of course, is what I do about research, is that I watched our show that we did before. And one of the things that you mentioned is that you like auditioning. And I know I have many people that, again, of course, are watching, that hate the audition process, that have stage fright, that just don't want any part of it. What would be your recommendation to them about liking it?
I think don't get ahead of yourself. I think that's probably what it is, because you envision being offered the role, and this is what happens to me, is that, if I got it, but then there's this other show, well, if I do 2 auditions, what if I get both? That's not what's going to happen. So I kind of think the best thing to do is go in prepared, know the roles that the role that you're auditioning for. If you can, read the entire play that you're auditioning for, so that you really understand what's going on, you understand the characters. If you're lucky enough to have the sides ahead of time, the pieces that you're going to audition, you're going to read, spend some time with those, and but then go in and just kind of throw caution to the winds and go big. That doesn't mean overact, but make really bold choices when you get there, because if you're a shy little mouse, nobody's going to remember you. And it's always easier for a director to pull an actor back and say, okay, don't give me quite as much, than it is to try and pull more out of an actor, I think. And you don't have much time. You go in there, you're going to make your impression, boom, and then it's over. And the other thing is, just don't have a thin skin. I think 98% of the time that you don't land a part, it's because you just didn't end up being the right person for the part. Nothing to do with talent. It's the vision the director has. It's everybody else who's auditioning. You're too tall, perhaps, or there's so many different factors that go into casting. And I've only been on that side of the table a few times because I'd rather be auditioning and performing. But, when you don't get it, just shrug it off, move on. And you have to make it fun. Otherwise, you're not going to do it. I've made friends outside the audition, the theater, in line waiting to audition, and everybody's nervous, everybody's scared, but what are you going to do?
Okay, let's hold that thought. I'm Deborah Gilbert. You are tuned into Arts and Entertainment. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
The latest social media scam is yet another phishing scheme designed to scare Facebook users into sharing their login credentials. You receive an email that appears to come from Facebook and says your page has been disabled for violating Facebook terms. If you believe the decision is incorrect, you can request a review and file an appeal at the link below. Well, the message may also state that if you don't act in the next 24 hours, Facebook will delete your account permanently. The email includes a link that appears to lead to Facebook.com. However, if you hover over the link, you'll discover that it doesn't point to Facebook's website. If you click the link, you'll likely be taken to an official-looking page and prompted to complete a form and confirm your password, giving scammers all the information they need to hack your account. Instead, what you should do is log into your Facebook account directly to verify there's a problem. Never enter your login information on a third-party website. And remember, scammers love to target social media accounts, so fake alerts are not uncommon. You can read more about phishing scams at bbb.org.
And welcome back to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host. And again, as always, thanks so much for being here. Well, my conversation continues on with Ginny Wolf. And Ginny, why don't we take a moment and talk about Herstory Theater? What is that all about?
Well, that came about, as I maybe briefly mentioned, back when I was beginning to tiptoe into theater, but I was also volunteering with the Stanley Whitman House in Farmington, Connecticut. It is a 18th century house, but at the time the director was had gotten a grant to try and pull together a resource list of all the primary resources having to do with the Connecticut witchcraft panics, which was news to me. I didn't know that Connecticut had a history of hanging witches. Turns out that the first person to be hanged for witchcraft was here in Connecticut in Windsor, 1647, Alice Young. I was born in Salem. I always knew about the Salem witchcraft panics, nothing about Connecticut. So as I was working with her to pull this together, I was so intrigued by the stories. 11 people were hanged for witchcraft, and most of them were women. And one of them was from Farmington. Her name was Mary Barnes. She was one of the last to be hanged for witchcraft. And Lisa Johnson, the director at the time, was writing a play in a preternatural way, The Witchcraft Trial of Mary Barnes. And I got to play Mary Barnes. But my interest was really piqued, and I started researching all these other women and thought, these stories need to be told. And so I put together the stories of 5 women who were accused of witchcraft, all of whom came to different ends, kind of like that musical Six, only it was five, and created a one-woman show, about 40 minutes, that bring 5 of them to life. And then I needed a way to market it. I needed something to do. How am I now going to perform this? So I started Herstory Theater. I became an LLC and then got a website, and which I'm woefully pathetic at keeping up, but you know, it's a necessary evil. And that started my my kind of career as a performance artist, a single woman. I also wrote a second show about Katie Leary, who was a housemaid to the Clemens family, to Mark Twain. I'd been working at the Mark Twain house in their living history capacity, and I just loved Katie Leary. She was with the family for 33 years. She never married. She actually turned down a marriage proposal in order to go to Europe with them. She was at each of their deathbeds, and her story is beautiful. So I wrote a one-woman show about her. So those are my 2 touring shows, and Herstory Theater, instead of history. And it's been really fulfilling. And then being able to now have an entity, a production company, that I could step out and do other fun things with my friends, for my friends. During COVID, we started a Herstory happy hour where we, at 5 o'clock once a month, had everybody join us online and have a glass of wine, and we did a reading of an original play. It's been fun. You know, theater, when you love to perform, the problem is it's not always up to you. If you audition, you got to have a show that you want to audition for, then you need to get cast. So by producing your own work, that gives you a little bit more fun, a little bit more time on stage.
You mentioned your website. Let's not forget that. What will the viewer find when they visit it?
Well, they will find herstorytheater.com, an overview of what Herstory Theater is, a calendar of events, things where I'm just beginning to get back. The people have not been hiring theatrical presentations, but things are coming back, and pictures from other events that we've been in, and now you're reminding me. Don't log on yet. Give me a couple of days to update it. The technical aspect of all of this is just not my forte.
What I don't want to forget is the League of Professional Theater Women, which you are very involved in, and I just had Lauren Yarger, the co-founder, last time come on, and other members as well. So why don't you talk about the organization? What is your involvement there?
Well, I'm part of the steering committee for the Connecticut chapter of the League of Professional Theater Women, and we kind of laugh. It's a mouthful, but it's so rewarding. The League of Professional Theater Women is overall, the large agency is housed in New York, but Lauren Yarger, Mary Nico from Goodspeed, and Marie Reynolds, a number of years ago, decided that Connecticut needed their own chapter. We have so many women in theater here in Connecticut, and getting into New York all the time is not easy. Plus, we want to focus on what women in Connecticut are doing. And so the League is actively recruiting members, professional women in theater. We are working hard to support each other, to promote each other, to bring in, now that, again, we can start gathering, do panels and education, and really bring women together and to highlight the talents and what's going on, and network with each other, support each other. It's a terrific organization.
Do you recommend to the actor or to individuals that have interest in theater to be able to get involved with organizations such as yours? Would it be worth their time?
For the chapter of, yes, I mean, there's a certain level that you have to be at to be part of the Connecticut chapter of the League of Professional Theater Women. However, many of our events are open to anyone to come in. You don't have to be a member. And probably the best way to stay on top of that is to like us on the Facebook page, because that's where we'll put a lot of the different events. And again, you know, even if you're not a member, you come to something, and there is the networking, there's the exposure to other people. It's really, really worthwhile.
With Herstory Theater and you mentioning one-woman plays, how is that for you to be on stage by yourself? I know there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into doing it, but how do you feel doing your work being all alone?
You know, it's just a different way of performing. I enjoy it, certainly, but especially when I was forming Herstory Theater and I was doing the writing and I was doing the marketing in the book, it was lonely. I was me and my computer. And so that's where being involved in other local theater, community theater, and getting out to rehearsal with a large cast, or not even just any cast, is really refreshing. But it's very nice to be paid for your work, which doesn't happen a lot if you're not a union actor. And when I book my shows, I get a performance fee, which adds to the coffers of Herstory Theater, allowing me to do other things. And it sort of lends a bit of legitimacy to the fact that, yes, you are an actor whose work is worthwhile. So when I wrote these shows, however, I had them directed. I brought in a good director to help me, because that's not what I'm good at. And also, you can't direct yourself. And the directors for my one-woman shows were invaluable as far as getting them staged and finding what's working, what isn't, what it needs, tweaking the script, adding to the script, all of that. It's really important. You can't work in a vacuum. You need to have the feedback of people who know what they're doing.
Is it worthwhile for somebody who has an idea that would like to do a one-woman show or a one-man show to be able to pursue it? Is there a market for it?
There really is. I perform at a number of museums, historical societies, libraries, and even, assisted living type places. They're always looking for entertainment for their residents. And it's very different. You don't have all the lights, you don't have the sound and all of that. My shows both, I come in a basket and I'm in costume and I just need a couple of chairs. You got to keep it simple if you really want to travel with it. But organizations do have the money. They've got the budgets to pay for entertainment. And I definitely think it's worthwhile. If you have an idea, you have a thought, why not? Go for it. Yes.
Well, we're here in 2023. Do you have anything on your calendar coming up in 23 or even 24?
Oh, yes. Yes, I do. As far as Herstory Theater is concerned, and I'll put these on the website, I'm performing my Panic in Connecticut show. Actually, I'm getting into Massachusetts, which is really kind of cool. Doing that up in Wilbraham, Massachusetts. I'm taking Katie Leary to Dudley, Massachusetts, both in May and June. And then outside of Herstory Theater, I'm really excited about this. I have a wonderful playwright friend, Betsy McGuire, who wrote a play, Wine with Winnie, which we are performed back in August at the Lost Acres Vineyard in North Granby, and we'll be performing again April 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. And it is just a hoot. To do it in a vineyard, I play Winnie, who has a talk show about wine, and she doesn't really know much about wine, and has a couple of wacky guests, and I have my musical accompanist, and it's great fun. And then also, Betsy has her own theater company, and actually you probably want to talk to her at some point, Playland Productions, and we are collaborating this year to do a Halloween show. We've commissioned 4 original old-time Halloween radio shows that we'll be performing, complete with the Foley artist, all the live sound effects and all of that. We'll be performing that the first weekend in October at Little Theatre of Manchester, and so that's going to be fun. I usually do a Christmas show, and I don't have that finalized yet. But and then I'm just looking for fun auditions for women of a certain age that I'm available for.
Well, as we start to run out of time, did you ever think about television work or film work or any other work in the industry besides what you're doing now, being it's theater?
I flirt with it. I've done a couple of film things. I used to do all the pledge drives on Connecticut Public Television, so that was the extent of most of my television experience. But I've done a couple of pilots for internet shows. I really do love live theater, and because I was in advertising, I know what it's like. Film work, commercial work, it's a lot of standing and waiting around for a little bit of time on film. So if somebody came to me and said, I want you to do this, I'd do it, but I'm not spending a lot of time pursuing that.
Well, again, as we start to run out of time, any closing thoughts for the viewers?
Well, it's just, yes, if that's one of the things, people bemoan that there's no parts for them, there's no nothing, and I truly believe you can make your own opportunity. So, get out there, figure out if you're not in a play and it makes you really sad, grab some friends together and do a play reading at home, even quietly, so you don't have to pay your royalties and all of that stuff. But there's a million ways to be involved with theater and to perform that you can make happen yourself.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Deborah. It's been wonderful. I love chatting with you.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Thank you again. And you've been tuned in to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host. Again, as always, thanks so much for being here. Hope you have a super day. Again, thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time.